BBC News.
Well, let's go to France and cross to Toulouse to speak to Dr. Thomas Withington, who's a defence analyst at the Munch Group. Dr. Withington, thank you very much for joining us. And what are your thoughts watching how this operation unfolded and was brought to a close relatively quickly?
Indeed, as your package, I think, just said quite neatly there, the speed and the dash with which the law enforcement authorities dealt with this situation is very, very interesting. We've seen a number of attacks in France over the past couple of years, and at least on two occasions, in the wake of the Charlie Hebdo attack on the satirical magazine and then the attacks at the concert venue in Paris, we saw an interregnum of a few days before the suspects were apprehended and in both cases killed. This showed that the French police and the French gendarmerie acted very, very speedily to bring the situation to a halt and to a close, both to safeguard members of the general public and to prevent any further loss of life.
Yeah, and the fact that we saw the state of emergency being lifted, I think last October, after nearly 2 years in place, what has been the system that they've put in place instead to enable them to respond to an incident like this quite so quickly?
I think, in essence, there's been a lot of lessons learned from recent attacks in France. I think the state of emergency notwithstanding for a second, what we've seen is that the ability to speedily react to events when they occur to prevent them escalating really is becoming the hallmarks of how the French police and law enforcement in general deal with these kind of attacks. France is blessed in many ways with having a large military, a large law enforcement apparatus, and also a lot of good logistics support. It's got a good road network. It's very easy to get around the country by military helicopter, by military aircraft. And all of these things can help the response times. As Mr. Schofield said in his piece at the beginning, major towns now have contingency plans and forces ready to deal with these situations when they come about. So I think many of the steps France has taken have been validated really by what's happened today. Although I would preface that by saying tactically, I've not been on the ground, so it's hard to say, and we still need to digest more lessons learned in the coming days.
Now, we're hearing lots of unconfirmed reports about the gunman, but we're hearing that he was on a list of around 12,000 people considered to be some sort of danger to France. He may have been involved in petty crime beforehand. I mean, what realistically can France do, or any country do, about a list that size?
The problem with lists is that, certainly from the sources I speak to in the world of the intelligence services and the anti-terrorist services, is that you can have a very large list, but that means you need a very large number of operatives to keep track of these people and see what they're doing. There's one figure that goes around in Europe that on average 50 people are required to keep constant tabs on one suspect to see what they're doing. So multiply that by the thousands or so who are on the list and you get an idea of the scale of the problem. I think the second problem is that it's very hard to know what to do with somebody until they've actually done something. We're hearing that the gentleman concerned today may have been a petty criminal. He may have been known to the police, but if you like to use a cliche, until he pulls the trigger, it's very hard to know how to deal with him. It's very hard, for instance, to take people into custody when they've not done anything. We've seen the problems that that's caused in places like Northern Ireland in the past, and also some of the controversies with the US-led global war on terror. So I think, to be fair, the intelligence service and the law enforcement authorities do the best job with what they have.
And just looking at the cluster of attacks that there were in France in 2015, 2016, and then this relative calm over the last year, I mean, is it possible to sort of deduce why it's been like that? What's behind it? Is it merely chance, or is something going on?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's been relatively calm behind the scenes. Certainly what I hear is that the French authorities have worked extremely hard to foil many, many attacks, which I think is the case throughout a lot of European countries. The sad thing is, to quote a line that was often used during the Troubles in Northern Ireland, we only have to be lucky once, you have to be lucky always. We hear on the news about the attacks which do succeed, which the authorities, for some reason or other, are simply unable to stop. So relative calm, yes, perhaps for people on the street, but I don't think that's necessarily been the case for the police, for the armed forces and for the intelligence services.
Fascinating to talk to you. Thank you very much, Dr. Thomas Withington, Defence Analyst there in Toulouse in southwest France.